Welcome to Pastors of the Roundtable. This is the discipleship podcast of Monroe Missionary Baptist Church, brought to you by Together in Christ, the teaching ministry of MMBC in Monroe, Michigan. We encourage thoughtful discussion about the Christian faith and connect you to the people and the ministries of MMBC. For the second week in a row, we have Miss Cara Schramm, our women's ministry leader, joining us to talk about women's ministry, the role of women in the body of Christ, in the church. And so we're so grateful that she's able to be with us again this week. Last week we talked about the role of women in the scriptures, looking at the Old Testament, the New Testament, and just kind of talking about what that kind of looks like in the Bible. But this week we want to talk about it more from the perspective of how can we seek to help women grow up in the grace and knowledge of Jesus Christ, to grow up in Him, and how can we encourage that? How can we encourage and foster a culture where the women in our church, but also the men in our church and our whole church together as a spiritual family looks at one another as family in the Lord, and we seek to build one another up in the most holy faith. So that's what we're here to talk about here, the importance of women's ministry here at MMBC. So, Cara, first question, the why question. Why is women's ministry important here at Monroe Missionary Baptist Church?
I feel that women's ministry is important because we are a family, a church family, brothers and sisters in Christ. And it's important to encourage each other to continue looking to Christ and being steadfast in the faith. And one of the ways we can do that is through women's ministry.
So, in between these episodes, you mentioned, because we talked about the church is a family. There are some people, though, when they hear that, they're concerned.
Right.
Why would people be concerned when they hear that description of the church, and how can we help them to realize that's a good thing, not a bad thing?
I think culturally the family has changed a lot. You know, the family isn't necessarily a mom and a dad and kids anymore. It's very different, and I think that there are a large number of people who have not had a positive family experience. Family is not a word that they have positive associations with. And they're reluctant to become a part of anything that is spoken of as a family. So I feel like it's important for the church to portray exactly what a family is and how it works together, and how that is actually a very good thing and something you do want to be part of. It's very vital to our living as Christians together, serving the Lord together. Right.
Tim, Scott, Dave? Any further thoughts about that? You guys are all about we are family, so.
I mean, the scriptures are very...
should play that song.
It's a good song.
Family. Yeah. The scriptures
I think we're singing that
clear.
next week in worship, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, that could be during like a greeting time or something.
We are family.
People be leaving.
Oh, Kara's doing the disco, yeah!
I mean, I think that the New Testament writers are very purposeful about using familial language to talk about one another, to talk about how older men are fathers in the Lord, older women are mothers in the Lord. We are brothers and sisters, one and of another. I think it's in 1 Timothy where it calls us the household of God, right? And so you can't get away from family language. And when you think about we can think of like our own modern context of what a family is in terms of a nuclear family and what that means. But I mean, thinking about the family in terms of like what their families were and how they considered themselves to be part of a family. And so like how would those who received the letter, that Paul wrote, calling you a brother or a sister, or referring to an older believer as your mother or your father, or as the church as the household of God, how would that have struck them in terms of this is what our relationship is to one another? Here's how vital it is, even over and above, in some ways, your blood family that you now have. Yeah, I mean, you can't get away from it. It's there.
So I want to ask this question about the physical, I don't know how you would say it, the nuclear family or the earthly family that we have. Cara, what are some ways that women help other women of different ages within, I mean, within your family? Because you've got a family of 3 women with a bunch of other men. How do you girls, you women in your family at home, minister to each other? Not even in spiritual things, but like, I'm sure there are things that you guys help each other out with that you don't with the boys, and the boys take care of each other and help each other out in ways that, does that make sense?
Yes, it is different. As a little bit of background, I have a 24-year-old, she's 24, right? 24-year-old daughter at home and a 7-year-old daughter at home and 4 boys in between. And I do feel like, especially Emma, my 24-year-old, and I have become very good friends. Now, we're at not only a parent-child relationship. Emma is one of my dearest friends. And we've come to know each other well enough that we can see when we need space. Sometimes in a household of women living together, it's like, okay, I'm not going to talk to you today. It's not because I don't love you, it's because I do love you.
Right.
And I don't really want you to talk to me either. So there are those kind of days, but there are also days, a lot of times, like Emma is my right-hand person. She helps me out so much. And in her relationship with Naomi is so blessed to have her because Emma is not her parent, but she is old enough to have a leadership role in her life, more so than a closer age sibling would be. And to see that what Marty and I are doing as parents is backed up by Emma and what's the word? Not emphasized, but accentuated. She complements that very well. We have very unique dynamics within our family because of that. But often Emma will help me out if I need help around the house. Emma's there. We work together as a team, and God has really blessed that relationship. And Emma is very valuable in our household. I think that's very good for Naomi to see that Emma's not there just doing whatever. She plays a very active role in our home. She serves us all, and that's good for Naomi to see that Mom's not the only one doing that.
Right.
Emma is doing that too, and she doesn't have to be married and have children to be doing that, So.
Right. Go ahead.
Emma's 25.
25.
Just helping you out.
Thank you.
The only reason I say that, she says you guys never care about her birthday, and it was just kind of coming true there for a second.
She shares a birthday with her brother, and I always forget my first 4 children are. I forget if they're on the odd years or the even years. They just switched. And
it's happened to me plenty of times at the pharmacy. Yeah. What's your child's birthday? I don't know.
Easton, what's your birthday?
Yeah, what is your birthday?
I have to count through. Yes.
Pop quiz. What's your birthday? No, I think that's a helpful thing to consider because, there are things that I do with my boys. My relationship with my boys is different from my relationship with my daughter. And there are conversations or even ways that I talk to my boys that I talk differently to my daughter, just simply because it doesn't mean I love them all the same, supposedly, but but it is different, and I think that's a helpful parallel to think about what women's ministry should be like in the church family, because there are things that women can help each other with. That you have been given each other in this family. It doesn't mean that men and women don't need each other also across the board in the church, but there is a special gifting and placement for women in the church and how they can encourage one another.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Like within my own immediate family, Emma can help me and minister to me in ways that my sons cannot, and vice versa. My sons can minister to me and help me in ways that Emma cannot, and they're both equally as important.
One of the things I'm a big Luther fan, right? But one of the things I love that he talks about, I don't know if this is under the section on where he's talking about the word preached, baptism, Lord's Supper, and so on, about like how the gospel comes to us. But one of the things he lists is he calls it this, and I like this description a lot, but he calls it the mutual consolation and conversation of the brethren. And what he's meaning by that is one of the ways the gospel comes to us is through the fellowship. And I like the word consolation, because whenever we share our burdens and we're honest with, we don't have to, it doesn't mean you have to share everything with everybody, but, you go to a trusted, maybe an older brother or a wiser sister in the Lord, and you share something or whatever, that brother or sister can console you with the gospel promises about Jesus Christ and what he's done for us. I've heard the phrase, the gospel always comes to us on the lips of another. That's the way God's designed the gospel to work, is it comes to us through the words and the mouth and the lips of men and women within the congregation of the church. The gospel comes to me often through my wife or through my family or through the guys here sitting around the table with me, or every single time we sing the songs in public worship, the gospel's coming to me on the lips of hundreds of other people. It's being shouted to me in my ears. And I see that as something that women's ministry should do. It's the mutual conversation and consolation of the sisters in Christ. Not exclusively to each other. They do that with their brothers as well in the Lord, but there's a unique thing that happens with women in the local churches. They are encouraging each other, spreading they're putting the gospel into each other's ears so that it sinks into our hearts. I mean, what do you think about that idea, Cara?
I think that you're right about that. I think women who have maybe some shared experiences or some shared similar experiences, nobody's experience is identical.
Sure.
But there have been women that have ministered to me in my life that maybe had experienced some similar things to me. And when they say to me, yes, this is normal. How you feel is normal. Keep looking to Christ. He will supply your needs. Remember that it's not about right now. Our eternity is with him. Keep your eyes on the prize. Keep going. Keep staying steadfast. Sometimes it's so encouraging to know that you're not alone. And yes, this is pretty normal, and it's okay, even if it's uncomfortable. And to have women that can speak that into your life is incredibly valuable.
Yeah. You're exactly right, because one of the great temptations of Satan is to make you think that you're alone or you're weird or no one else struggles with this or that or has gone through this, that, or the other thing. There's the reason why God said it is not good for man to be alone. Right. That doesn't simply apply to the marriage relationship. That applies to all of humanity. We are societal beings. Right. We are meant to live in society with others, and we are inadequate by ourselves. So we need each other. Let me ask you this question, Cara. How can women's ministry? You've been in different churches, different church contexts. What are some ways that you've seen ministry to women being done in a way that's, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but maybe it's inadequate, or it may be wrong. What are some, I guess I'm asking for some bad examples or some inadequate examples. What are some ways that you've seen women's ministry done that, is inadequate to actually carry out what the New Testament and what the gospel calls women towards?
That's a good question. I think sometimes maybe there have been times where there have been scheduled gatherings or Bible studies or whatever that are scheduled on a regular schedule, but it's maybe not at a time that's available to other people, to all people. And there are women who really need to be involved and would love to be involved, but can't because of whatever, they just can't attend, whether they have children, and can't come because they are caring for children. I feel like women's ministry, it's important to take into consideration the needs of your church body and when they are available and seek to meet their needs. Now, that might vary depending on the size of your church and the stage of life of the people within your church. If your church has a high percentage of young moms, you're going to have to be creative in how you can meet their needs because they are very busy in their homes. And it's often hard to minister to people when they are in their homes unless you're in their home with them for some reason or another. So I feel like being creative in taking your opportunities to meet their needs is really important.
One of the things that I've noticed, and I think my wife would totally agree with this. I don't know if you, I've got a sneaky suspicion that you will likewise as well, but sometimes the content that is geared towards women and women's ministries to be taught, I'm going to use the word, it's often quite shallow. Mm-hmm. And I think there almost seems to be this assumption, and maybe this is changing today. I do think there's better resources for women available than maybe there were 20 or 30 years ago. But there's almost this assumption that women are just more passive. They don't need to really think. Right. And I guess that's something that's always kind of bothered me. Mm-hmm. It's like women need this specific study that's only about feminine things, instead of let's do a real study of the book of Romans or something like that, because women are Christians just like men, and we all need the same stuff at our core. We apply it differently right. Because we are men and women. But what do you think about that?
I do feel like there is some of that. I do feel like it's changing. I feel like earlier when I was younger and leading a women's Sunday school class at my church, the materials that were available were, at least that I was aware of, were pretty poor and very shallow. I do feel like it is changing some, and there are some more good things that are available that are pre-made. And I do feel like that really all you do need is the Bible. You know, you can just do a Bible study with just the Bible. You don't have to have a book, and that takes definitely some more planning and preparation. Mm-hmm. But it is doable, and I feel like that's important, and I don't feel like women are afraid of that, like that they will be open and willing to hear that and to participate in that, and they're fully capable of doing so. That they want to do that. They're hungry for the word, just like men are. God is, when he claws our heart and claims us as his own, we hunger for that. We hunger for that relationship with him, that study.
You know, we're sitting in a room with Christian books in it, and I'm looking at them, what little I can read from this far nowadays.
You need glasses.
I have glasses. I just don't wear them. That always bugged me about men's ministry. I know we're talking about women's ministry, but I hated when I would do a men's study that was geared towards men, because I always thought it was corny. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I felt the same way when I was a youth. When they would like hand out, well, this is a youth New Testament.
And it's got graffiti on it.
And I'm like, this is the dumbest. As a youth, I thought this is the dumbest thing. And I don't know, I guess the Bible is for everybody. And when you have a good Christian book, it's for everybody.
Exactly.
You know, and so I've often wondered that about women's ministry, because I've noticed that they're always looking for, it seems like, for studies that were geared towards women. And that was always kind of confounding to me, because I thought, why don't you just do a study, like a good study that everybody can do together? Why does it have to be geared specifically towards women? And I don't know why that is, or what the thought is there, I guess.
I'm not sure either, because I agree with you completely. I don't feel like it necessarily needs to be geared towards women. I do feel like there is a special place for women to encourage and support each other. But I don't necessarily think that needs to be done through Bible study, you know, like specific Bible study. I think that can take place at any other time as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most important women's ministry event a woman should ever go to is Sunday morning worship with their church.
Yes.
That's what I would say. I'd say the same for men. I'd say the same for teens. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing to be at. And I would then say the second thing would probably be Sunday school.
Right.
Where you're with men and women together, you know, going through a study together. To me, that's very important. That'd be the second most important thing. The whole individual studies would really fall down the list quite far for me, for men and women.
Right. Any other women's thing would just be supplementary to those that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would even place, like you said, like a women's fellowship ahead probably of a women's Bible study, personally. Yeah. Because they can have the Bible study on Sunday morning and then Sunday school, and we have Sunday evening worship as well, where the Bible is taught, right? And it's for everybody to hear. Right. But like you were saying, those fellowship times are different. That can't be done really on Sunday morning as a whole group, or if it's just a bunch of families getting together, that's a good thing too.
Right.
But there is something a little different if women just get together or if men just get together, really for fellowship, like you said, or bonding or
Right.
whatever it might be.
For
Right.
relationship building. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a big part of this too is this is a side topic, but is teaching people, because we are called to be a kingdom of priests. We are a holy priesthood as Christians. And one of the things that means, I think, is having ears that are able to understand when someone is confessing. Particularly, I think about some people are talking about how hard their life is, but they're actually trying to confess sin to you in a way without doing it. Sometimes we do that, right? It's like, man, I'm just really struggling with X, Y, or Z, or, this is really hard right now. And actually they're trying to confess something that's on their heart, but they don't know how to do it exactly. And I think part of that is helping men and women have ears that understand what's going on. And instead of saying, you know what, that means partially this is true. We do want to say, I understand what you're going through. I can identify at some level, at least, with what you're saying. But now here is the gospel promise. Because as priests, as priests, a kingdom of priests, our job is not simply to be able to hear and to sympathize with people, but also to remind them then of the forgiveness that's found in Jesus Christ. So to also tell that brother or sister, I hear what you're saying, but remember, Christ died for that too, and you can keep going in this promise as well. And I'm going to pray for you in that. And I think that's something that's not simply for women; that's for men and women, that we need to be ready to hear in those fellowship times, and to not simply say, "Yeah, that's really hard."
Yeah.
And then stop. No, that we can't stop there because we haven't gotten to the gospel yet. And so we want to highlight to people their role as a kingdom of priests to spread the gospel in those small ways. That's the mutual conversation and consolation of the brethren that we were talking about earlier, or the sisters, to console one another in the gospel promises and in the truth of the Bible, because that's how God encourages and changes our hearts, is through that ministry of the word.
I was just thinking about those conversations that you're talking about, Spencer, and for me, that hasn't happened much in big fellowship settings. It seems to happen more with like one-on-one or smaller group settings, and it's not designed for that necessarily. Conversations happen like that more often in a golf cart.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Or having coffee or having lunch together, or like you invite a family over, and then in that. I think it's hard to have those types of conversations that you're talking about at a like the women's tea that will be coming up soon or something. Those are good and they have their spot, but you don't get a lot of that bonding together and really talking. Sure. And it takes effort, I think, for the women in the church. And that's where the women's ministry becomes important, for all the women to see you're all a part of this ministry, whether you're coming to the women's tea or the conference. If you're a woman at MMBC, you're a part of the women's ministry.
Right.
And we want to serve you, and you guys serve each other. And this is how it happens, where we bear each other's burdens, usually is going to be one-on-one, or three of us, or four of us. And that's stuff that Cara just can't plan.
No.
You know what I mean?
I think that's where the women's ministry gatherings are important, where they come in, because Sunday mornings isn't necessarily the relationship building time. That's our time to be taught and to worship the Lord together. But our women's gatherings is where the relationship building happens, where you can get to know other women on not even a super deep level, just on a more comfortable level, where you might be able to say, hey, let's get together for coffee this week. And then that's when those conversations can happen. So it's a step to that. It's a very important step. You can't go just from seeing each other and passing on Sunday mornings to these heartfelt conversations. Sure. There has to be a bridge between. That's where the women's ministry.
You're fostering those things.
Yes. You're trying to foster that community, that familiarity, those friendships, where it can lead to something more, where you can exhort each other in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. I think too, related to this is by having, for instance, this is different, but it's whenever we have that public confession of sin, that we talk about, that's a general thing. So we're not airing anybody specific's dirty laundry, but that is meant to then set the, I don't know how I want to say that, but it's kind of like setting the tone for what it should look like as you get. Also, that shouldn't stop just at the church service. That's setting the tone for women's ministry, where people are like, yeah, we are all sinners. Or then you get to normal conversations like one-on-one conversations. I guess, yeah, they all work in tandem, hopefully setting that. And that's the way this should work in all of those larger settings to filter down. Right. I would think. Yeah, what else do I need? What else? I look at my piece of paper here. So here at MMBC, right, we're talking about women encouraging one another. Now, much of that's going to happen without any kind of programized activities. How would you encourage women to get started in something like that? You got an individual woman here hearing what you're saying, but this isn't going to happen just over simply because of some organized program.
Right.
How would you encourage a woman to take some steps in that direction?
If they want to start serving other women, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or just kind of being a part of that kind of culture that you're hoping to create and foster.
Well, one thing is come when there are events scheduled. Come, and so that you can get to know other women. Another way I feel like that it's really easy to be involved is to sign up for the meal train. And you don't have to cook to sign up for the meal train. Takeout or a gift card works equally as well. So that's a good way to minister to people who actually are currently in need. And if you don't know them, it's a good way to get to know them. It's a good way to... it's a good, easy way to serve, to get your foot in the door and to build relationships there. I have found in my life, the times that I was ministered to the most came through food and the resulting dishes, to be honest. There have been many times that people have come into my house and have done my dishes for me because I was not capable of doing them because of maybe some physical challenge I was going through at the time. And it seems very simple and very basic, dishes are an everyday thing, but they met my needs where I was at that moment, and it wasn't anything flashy. It wasn't anything pre-planned. It wasn't like we have to schedule this and I have to have training to do this, to serve these people in this way. No, you just come wash my bowls and spoons, and it was really important to me, and it had a significant impact in my life at that time.
So you're saying if someone wants to get involved in women's ministry, just come over and wash your dishes. It's
fabulous.
A great way to really get involved.
My point is it doesn't have to be anything flashy or fancy or require training or something that's planned. It can be something very simple and small, and it doesn't take anybody special or important. Just somebody ordinary can serve in great ways. In very small ways.
I really like what you brought up about food, because that's an interesting thing that across all cultures,
we have to eat.
Food is something that is used. I mean, one of our 2 ordinances is a meal, the Lord's Supper. And it's because food is supposed to bring people together. It's supposed to be a communal event, a relationship building event. There's something inherent about food that does that. And so that's fascinating that you said that.
Yeah, we have to eat to stay alive.
Right.
So it's a basic need that we have, and often it's a need that we can meet for someone else.
That's really good. So women's ministry in our church, just broadly, what are some things that women's ministry is going to try to do maybe? What are some ideas that you have maybe, or your vision for women's ministry? Maybe there's things that, you're just still thinking about, and you don't have to bring those up, but just broadly speaking, for the women in our church, what is your vision, your hope for women's ministry here at MMBC going forward? And I guess, how can they talk to you maybe if they have ideas or whatever, and they want to get connected with you as the women's ministry leader? Just if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Those are some really great questions, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about lately. One of the things I am passionate about is that women's ministry does not involve anybody special or anybody fancy, and it doesn't require any training. It's just through ordinary people being together in ordinary everyday things. I feel like that is often lost in women's ministry, that they feel like, I can't serve, I can't help because I don't know how to do it. You can. And I want to put more emphasis on that and show people that, yes, you can serve this way, and you can be a big help and have a big impact on people's lives. I hope in the future soon to have less structured events where women can come and just have some relationship building time, where they can get to know each other on a more friendship level that leads to further relationships elsewhere. We need that time together to develop those friendships to support each other, because you can't go from Sunday morning to some personal thing. There has to be some in between kind of friendship building. I feel like that's really important. I feel that's really needed. I feel that's a needed thing in our church culture. I feel like there are some needed times for moms to be able to get away even just for an hour or an hour and a half without children clinging on their arms. I want to work on that somehow.
My wife would like an hour without me, probably.
That might be true as well.
Yeah.
We can arrange for that. Yes, so I would really welcome input on what other women in the church see as their needs, what needs there are, and what can we meet and how can we meet them.
That's great. Well, let me do one last plug for the conference, because they do have an opportunity this is a learning opportunity, but also a fellowship. There's a lot of fellowship time built into this conference, which I think is really important for any good conference. There are some conferences that are just cram-packed full of talks to where you're like, you're just drinking from a fire hose and you have no time to digest or fellowship with other people. This conference is going to have times for learning, but also times for fellowship. So if you want to talk about the conference, Cara.
Friday evening, September 22nd, we have a session, and then after the session, we'll have light refreshments in the fellowship hall, and we built that in as time for women to just be able to talk with each other and to talk about what they've heard in the conference, ask questions, or just small talk, whatever they want. And then Saturday morning, September 23rd, we'll have 2 sessions. In between there, we'll have a break with a coffee bar set up for women to just mingle and have a cup of coffee together. And then there's a question and answer session that hopefully will spark some discussion. And then we have a lunch together where we're just sit around together in tables, and you can stay as long as you want for lunch and talk with each other. So there's some built-in time there to build relationships. I'm excited about the fact that we have a lot of people already signed up from other churches. I really feel like it's important to know that there are other believers in other church bodies. It's always so encouraging to me when I have a conversation with another women's ministry leader and see that they are in their church serving the Lord. They're trying to do their best. It's always so encouraging and refreshing for me to hear that. And I think that's an important, like a special aspect, that this kind of conference thing where we will be with other believers from other churches and can mutually support each other.
That's wonderful. And so if they want to register for that, they just contact the church office or call
the church office or go to the event page on the church website. I don't think the registration is very complicated. It's easy to sign up. Please don't let finances be a burden for you. If you feel like you can't come because it's a financial problem, please sign up anyway. Call our church office, say, I'm struggling with this. We have some scholarships built in that we will be happy to offer you. Don't hesitate to mention that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Cara, for coming in. I appreciate it. This has been a really good conversation. So, reach out to Cara if you're a lady in the church and you would like to learn more about women's ministry, how you can get involved, what that looks like. I'm sure she would be happy to talk to you and encourage you. And also, if you know of a woman or you are a woman and you would like to come to the women's conference on September 22nd, 23rd, call the church office, check it out. And I think it's going to be a great time. So I'm a man and I'm going to be there. But that's not because I identify as a woman. Okay, just so you know.
Some of the men be our servers for lunch, and they will help us in the background.
That's right. So we are going to do our best. I'm not cooking probably, but I might serve some soup. So, okay. All right. Well, thanks for coming in. Take care. God bless.